Hello and welcome back to another Rush Duel Links video. Today we're going to be predicting what we think is going to be in the next box. We recently did get a deck build box that did contain some of Gavin's cards and more specifically his fusion monsters Yamiterasu and Kemiterasu. So we basically did just get some more 7 support. So we would expect some Go Rush support to be in the near future, and this seems to coincide with the November upcoming updates in which ZUWIJO ZUWIJO has been teased to be coming in Duel Links. So we got the line, in that case, defeat me if you can. Now we don't have an English dub or Go Rush, but this is similar to one of ZUWIJO's lines from Go Rush, so we can basically almost guarantee that we're getting ZUWIJO. Now, ZUWIJO's name has been changed a little bit. It has a U in it. It used to just be ZW, so it's ZUWIJO, which is basically fine. It's not really going to change the pronunciation that much. But the interesting thing is this does mean that we're skipping over Manabu and his chemicalized pyro deck. So we're going to assume we're not going to be seeing him or any of his cards in the next box. That's one thing. And we can expect to see some Dark Galaxy cards. So let's talk about ZUWIJO's ace monster, Void Velgear Requiem. So this is a pretty cool monster, level 8, 2500 attack. So 2500 attack is really good. That's what we really want to see on a boss monster. 2000 defense as well is actually not bad. We can send the top card of our deck to the graveyard, and then this card gains attack equal to the number of face-up dark attribute monsters on your field times 300 until the end of this turn. So if it's on its own, it'll hit 28. If we have one other dark monster, it will go up to 31. And if we have a full board of dark monsters, it will go up to 3400, which is an okay number. 34 isn't going to be super relevant in the current meta because there's not a lot that 34 will hit that 31 won't. But if your opponent has a face-up light attribute monster on their field, this card gains 600 attack until the end of the turn, which will now let it cap out at 4000. And this could be relevant if you're maybe playing against Cyburst. They summon out an Yggdrago. Yggdrago is a light monster, so if we do get 3 monsters out, we can boost up to 4k and crash into the Yggdrago. So not bad. So this is kind of a sub-theme for the Dark Galaxy. They do tend to have cards that work against specifically the Light Galaxy deck. So we do have some effects that work against normal monsters. We do have some effects that work against light monsters, and this is one of the most prevalent ones. So Requiem does also have a couple of fusions that we will be getting a lot later on. I wouldn't expect to see any of those anytime soon, but much like everyone else's aces, this is a card that if you're looking to play Dark Galaxy in the long run, you'll want to be picking up. Next up, we have Ultraviolet, and this isn't specifically a ZUWIJO card, but this card came out alongside Requiem with the debut of the Dark Galaxies. So Ultraviolet, 2500 attack level 8, so again, pretty good. 2500 is a good stat. And then continuous effect, neither player can special summon level 7 monsters from the graveyard. So this is an interesting effect. Right now, this would actually be pretty good because we are seeing Secret Order running around quite a lot. So this is actually a pretty good anti-Udius card. Overall, not the most powerful effect. It only specifically stops level 7s, so it only really is going to be relevant if there are actually level 7s being summoned from the graveyard. This card probably won't have much longevity, but if it was to come out very soon, it might actually see a bit of play. Next up, we'll talk about Void Velgear Elysium. So this kind of came out very shortly after we got the Dark Galaxy. This was kind of part of a deck that came out very shortly after the set had released, and it's okay. 2500 attack, again, really good stat line. So far, really good stat lines on all of these boss monsters. Level 8 as well, so we're seeing a trend of all level 8s. Send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard, change 1 face-up monster on your opponent's field to face-down defense position. This card gains 500 attack until the end of this turn. Then if we send a monster to the graveyard to meet the requirement, this card cannot be destroyed by trap cards. So sending a card from our hand to the graveyard is not great, right? We don't really want to be discarding cards ever, really, if we can help it. But we can change a face-up monster on the opponent's field to face-down defense position. Now this can be on fusions, which means this is actually pretty good, but this cannot change defense to attack, which means we won't be able to, for example, get to your opponent's life points through set 3 pass. Gaining 500 attack is pretty cool. Going up to 3000 is quite relevant. There are a lot of 28, 29s, and 3000 attack monsters running around right now. So if this did come out, being able to boost up to 3000 would be relevant. And then if we send a monster to the graveyard, we get that trap card immunity, which is right now only really going to be relevant to Widespread Ruin. But Widespread Ruin is actually seeing quite a lot of play, so this card would probably be okay, assuming Dark Galaxy got a decent skill. Next up, we have Void Velgear Hecaton Chair, and this card is interesting. So it's a level 7, so that's the first kind of weird part about this card, because all the rest of the cards are level 8. And typically in the OCG, you do want as many of your monsters to be the same level as possible because of the consistency tools in Trade-In, Ship of the Seven Treasures, and Charm of Saturn. So because of those, you ideally want all your boss monsters to be the same level. So having a 7 in there does mess things around a bit, but in Duel Links I don't have any of those consistency tools, so it might not matter as much. But it also only has 2000 attack, which is not great. 2600 defense is quite good, however. But we can change this attack position card to face-up defense position to inflict 500 damage. So 500 is not a ton. Then, if we have a face-up level 8 monster on our field, so obviously not itself, we need one of our other Dark Galaxy boss monsters, we can change the battle position of one face-up Galaxy-type monster on your field. So presumably we could change this back into attack mode, but it's still only got 2000 attack. I don't really like this card. I don't remember this card really seeing any play. It's very awkward for a lot of different reasons, and it's just not very strong. This would need a really good skill for it to really do anything, I feel. But you never know, we might just get a skill just for this card. And then we have Star Trancer, and Star Trancer is actually kinda cool. So 1700 attack on a level 6, not the best attack, and obviously we're not really wanting to have level 6s if we can help it, but we can send this face-up card from your field to the graveyard to special summon one Galaxy-type monster from your hand face-up to your field. Then if you special summon the level 8 monster by this effect, this turn it gains 400 attack and piercing. So this card is actually not that bad. In terms of card economy, it's basically spot on, because if we were to summon a level 8 normally, we would normal summon, tribute both to summon out our boss. To get out a boss monster using this effect, we would normal summon tribute for a Star Trancer, then tribute the Star Trancer for its effect to summon out the level 8 from our hand, so it's not costing us anything extra. And gaining 400 attack and piercing is pretty good. The only negative is, this does mean playing more bricks in the deck. If we are playing more level 6s to go with our level 8s, we now are playing a lot more tribute monsters, which means there is a higher chance of bricking, which can get a bit awkward. Star Trancer did see a little bit of play in the OCG, and I would expect this card to see a bit of play in Duel Links as well. Dark Galaxy doesn't have a ton of ways to beat set 3 pass, so being able to get this piercing could be really important. Next up, ZUWIJO Pale Rider, and this is Transam Lilac, but it's dark, so having a new 1600 vanilla. And this card, much like Transam Lilac, will get a lot of support cards for it, and Pale Rider is specifically half of a fusion, so we will want to pick this card up just because it's good stats, but also we will again get more cards that work with it and fusions in the future. Next up, we'll talk about Parashroom Colony. So 1000 attack, 1000 defense, pretty okay stats, level 4. If we have a face-up level 7 or higher Galaxy type monster on our field, and notably this is not light or dark, so we could play this in Light Galaxy if we wanted to, special summon one Parashroom Colony, so another copy of itself, from your graveyard face-up to your field. So this is okay, right? So if we had a lot of high-level monsters in our hand, and we had a Parashroom Colony in the graveyard, what we could do is summon out a Parashroom Colony next to our boss monster, use its effect to bring back another copy, then tribute the boss monster and the Parashroom Colony that we originally summoned to summon out another boss monster. Because we have a new boss, we can use that second Parashroom Colony to bring back the first one again, and we can loop this as many times as we need to basically empty our hand of all of the boss monsters that we could be bricking on. This card does have some pretty interesting uses, but for the most part is basically just going to be a way to get an extra body to tribute out more monsters. Next up, Burst Ray Gunman. So we can reveal one level 7 or higher Galaxy type monster in our hand to inflict damage to your opponent equal to the number of face-up monsters on their field times 200, so this is going to cap out at 600 burn. Then we can make one face-up monster on your opponent's field become light attribute until the end of this turn. So there aren't a ton of ways to really take advantage of turning them into light. One of the obvious ones is going to be Requiem, who can gain extra 600 attack, but this is okay, right? There's some situations where this will come up and it can be helpful. Then we have ZUWIJO Globule, and this card is really, really good and still does see play in Dark Galaxy builds to this day. So 0 attack, 1300 defense, very respectable. We can shuffle 3 Dark Attribute Galaxy type monsters from your graveyard into the deck. This turn, this face-up card can be treated as 2 tributes for the tribute summon of a Dark Attribute Galaxy type monster in attack position. So this is really good. We get to recycle cards, which is always going to be a really powerful effect, as well as the fact we can use this as 2 tributes to get out a monster, which basically gets a discount on summoning, which is really, really good. And this card also does get a fusion later on, which is also really, really strong. The Globule is definitely going to be a must-have when Dark Galaxy drops. Then there is ZUWIJO Meteon, and this is an interesting one. So it's level 2, 500 attack, 900 defense. If you have a face-up level 7 higher Galaxy type monster on your field, we can send this face-up card from your field to the graveyard. Destroy one level 6 or lower light attribute monster on the opponent's field, inflict 300 damage to your opponent. So this is a bit weird. So if your opponent is playing level 6 and lower lights, we can pop them. Chances are this is going to be popping level 4s if anything. It does have to give up itself as well, and your opponent might not be playing light, but we could use Ray Gunman to change them into light and kind of get rid of it that way, but that is quite intricate of a combo. I'm not sure how much play this card will see. I think it will really depend on what the meta is like when it comes out. I wouldn't expect Meteion to be particularly strong. And then we have Meteor Lava, and this is actually a really, really cool card. But stats, pretty terrible. 600 attack, 0 defense. But we can send cards equal to the number of face-up Galaxy-type monsters on your field from the top of your deck to the graveyard. So potentially being able to mill 3 cards is really strong. A lot of cards really want you to fill up your graveyard with specific cards, or just get lots of monsters in the graveyard, for example. So being able to forcefully get a load in there can be really, really good. Meteor Lava might not be immediately good, but as we go forward, I would expect this card to get more and more valuable. And now we'll talk about a spell card. This is Void Corridor. So if we have a Dark Attribute Galaxy type monster in your graveyard, we can send 1 card from our hand to the graveyard to add 1 Dark Attribute Galaxy type monster from your graveyard to your hand. So basically this -1s us, right? We're losing the spell card, but then we're replacing the card we discard with another card from our graveyard, which is okay. So why would we do this? So first off, if our hand is bricked up of all high levels, we can get rid of one of those high levels and get a normal summon from the graveyard. And if that normal summon is a globule or a parashroom, we can use it to basically get extra bodies or discount our tribute summons, get out our boss monsters, bam, 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 fantastic. Or if we don't have any boss monsters, we can get rid of a normal summon from our hand and grab a boss monster back from the graveyard, and then we can actually do something with the turn, so it can be pretty good. But as we go forward, we will also be getting fusions, and this will help us fix our hand to get the correct fusion material to be able to make the Dark Galaxy fusions that we want, so Void Corridor, very, very useful. And now we'll talk about some of the early trap cards that we did see Dark Galaxy get, and first one is Void Intercept. When your opponent normal or special summons a monster face up, while the only face up monsters on your field are Dark Attribute Galaxy type monsters, we can send 1 random card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard. Then if your opponent has 2 or more cards in their hand, they can draw 1 card. So this is kinda bad. I can't really think of a good reason you'd want to use this card. It's not ideal. Taking cards out your opponent's hand is not usually particularly strong, so I wouldn't expect this card to really do much. There will be some niche cases where taking a card out of hand could be pretty good. As for right now, I'm thinking your opponent's playing around you having a Thunder Gazelle, like maybe that could be okay. I don't know if this trap card will come out, and even if it does, I don't think it's going to be good, but I thought we'd mention it. And then a trap card that is actually really good, and because it's good, I don't actually think we'll get this card, Void Veil. Now this again was one of the early trap cards released along with Dark Galaxy. But when your opponent normal or special summons a monster face up, where you have 2 or more face up Dark Attribute Galaxy type monsters on your field, change 1 face up level 8 or lower monster on your opponent's field to defense position. So level 8 or lower means this will not work on fusions, or at least not a lot of them. This will also not work on maximums because they can't be in defense and they're above level 8. But if we have a face up level 8 Galaxy type monster on our field, we can return 1 defense position monster on the opponent's field to the hand. So this doesn't have to be the monster we change to face down defense, but it could be. So very, very powerful trap, especially compared to what we have right now in Duel Links. And I think that's why we're not likely to see this card. Now, what we could see is a bunch of really good traps drop at the same time, and then they give us Void Veil. But since we're only really expecting a super mini, and that will only have 40 cards, I don't really know how many they could squeeze in there, so I'm not really expecting this, but it would be a nice surprise if we did get Void Veil. Now we'll talk about some of the Dark Galaxy cards that released a little bit later. This was kind of the second big wave of Dark Galaxy support released, and some of the cards I think could potentially come out in Duel Links a bit earlier. And the first one is this one, Voidvelgia Transy. The 2400 attack is kinda weak. All the other ones are 25 except Hecaton Chair, so not the best stats, but during the main phase that you normal or special summon this card, destroy all face-up normal monsters on the field. And this is the reason this card I think should come out a bit earlier, because as we go forward, although Light Galaxy will always be using normal monsters, it won't be a primarily normal monster focused deck. It will play as few as possible to still make the deck work. So while the deck still does play a lot of normal monsters, I think it would make sense to bring this card out. But then, this card gains attack equal to the number of monsters destroyed by this effect times 300, so it's going to cap out at 900 bonus, which is going to put it up to 33. This turn, you can only attack with this card. I think this last line is what makes this card pretty balanced, because we can wipe our opponent's board, but then we only get 1 attack, and that's only for 33. So you could argue this is over half your opponent's life, but there are decks that basically are a lot more unfair than this effect already. So I think if this card came out much later, then along with ZUWIJO, we probably wouldn't play it anyway. So I think this is the only chance this card has to be good, unless of course it gets a dedicated skill to really help it out. And then we have Voidvelgia Cataphractos. So this is pretty cool, 1000 attack, 1000 defense, level 4. You normal summon this card this turn and have another face-up dark attribute monster on your field. Then the top card of your deck to the graveyard. Then if you sent a monster to the graveyard by this effect, you can add one level 8 galaxy type monster from your graveyard to your hand. So this is pretty good. Worst case scenario, it just mills one, which is fine. Best case scenario, we mill a monster and then we get to get a free +1, and that +1 is a boss monster from our graveyard. This card would be fantastic. Now, would this card be a little bit too good? I mean, there is maybe an argument that just getting a free +1 and guaranteeing it's a boss monster might be a little bit too good for right now. Personally, I think this would be fine, but I'm not convinced this card would come out with ZUWIJO. And now we'll talk about the elephant in the room, and that is Dark Hole. So some of the Dark Galaxy cards do specifically reference Dark Hole, and Dark Hole was quite a big anime card for ZUWIJO. But I don't think we're going to get this with him. I think it's still a little bit early. I think that when we do start getting the Dark Galaxy Fusion monsters and all the cards that do reference Dark Hole, we will be getting Dark Hole as a legend card in Duel Links, but not for a while. But I thought we would address this. And on the same sort of line, I guess we will also mention Dark Hole Device, which is a card that becomes Dark Hole in the graveyard. This card is very similar to Dragonic Pressure, where we have to send 3 Dark Galaxies from our hand to the graveyard, wipe the board, then we add a Galaxy card from our graveyard to our hand, whereas that would special summon one to the field. The main difference between this card is that this card's name becomes Dark Hole while in the graveyard, which does enable some of our other Dark Galaxy card effects that do specifically mention Dark Hole and need it to be in the graveyard. So now we're going to talk about some cards that we think might be coming out alongside the Dark Galaxy cards. And there are a couple of different options for what we think we could get. So first off, I want to talk about some of the cards and archetypes that released alongside Dark Galaxy in the OCG. And the first one we're going to talk about is the Heartless Hounds. Heartless Hounds is a really cool archetype of Beast Warrior monsters, and I personally have really enjoyed playing them. They're basically an archetype that wants to swarm the board with large guys, which is pretty fun. But they can struggle to get 3 set 3 pass, as they don't have any multi-attack, they don't really change your opponent's battle positions, and they don't have piercing. So this is the first one, Heartless Hound Martial Master Shiba. 2500 attack, fantastic attack stat. During the main phase that you normal or special summon this card, special summon 1 level 5 to 7 Beast Warrior monster from your graveyard face up to your field. So in an ideal world, the card we're going to be summoning is Heartless Hound Thunder Emperor Drynu, so 2400 attack. A little bit worse, right? It's not quite that 25 we'd like to see, but we can send the top 2 cards of the deck to the graveyard. Then if we activated this effect during the main phase that we normal or special summon this card, we can special summon a level 6 or lower Beast Warrior type normal monster from our graveyard face up to our field. So the combo is going to be, we summon out Heartless Hound Martial Master Shiba, use its effect to bring back Drynu, then use Drynu's effect to bring back Nekogao number 2. Now this card was originally released alongside the Heartless Hound, but we do already have this in Duel Links as a ranked reward, so this would probably be the best card to bring back. 1900 body is okay. Now this is a little bit weaker than it was in OCG, just because then we had Beast Gear World, so we could make these a 28, a 27, and a 22 respectively, which obviously is a lot better. As is, Drynu can't even attack over a 25, which is not the best, but there is still some potential with this, especially if we did get some sort of skill. And then we'll talk about the other Heartless Hound boss. This is Heartless Hound Apex Katana Damburamation. So not the most exciting card, it's just a vanilla, and it does only have 24 instead of that coveted 2500 attack, but it is part of the archetype, so I thought we would mention it. And then there are a bunch of other vanillas in the archetype, but no more actual effect monsters, and this is the best one, being a 1500 attacker, Heartless Hound Striking Kaiken Knuckle. So again, there are a lot more other vanillas, which would be quite nice if we had the field spell Beast Gear World, but since we don't, they're pretty much just weak vanillas. And then the only spell card in this archetype is the Woofteful Heartless Hound. If we have 2 or more face-up Beast Warrior type monsters in the field, we can send the top 4 cards of the deck to the graveyard. Then if you sent 4 Beast Warrior type monsters to the graveyard by this effect, which is kind of steep, we have to guarantee all 4 of those are all going to be Beast Warriors, which means we just have to avoid hitting any spells or traps basically. We can make 1 face-up monster on your field gain 1200 attack until the end of the turn. 1200 attack is nice, it's nothing like super crazy, this card isn't very good and did not see much play. Another archetype we could see is the normal reptile cards originally played by Mitsuko. So this is Alien Count of the White Dwarf Saint Germain, and this is actually 2500 attack on a level 7 normal monster, which means this is perfect for Secret Order. So there's not really much interesting going on in this archetype. The archetype is basically kind of a gimmick archetype that's all based around the number 3, and it's all based around urban legends. And every monster in the archetype is a normal monster, which does make them a bit boring, but they do get their own field spell, Area 33. So we can activate this card if you have 2 or more face-up level 3 or lower reptile-type normal monsters on your field. While this card is face-up in the field zone, face-up reptile-type normal monsters gain 600 attack. So if we summon out 2 of our low-level reptiles, we can then activate Area 33, then tribute the monsters to summon out White Dwarf Saint Germain, who comes out as a 3100, which is okay. Again, this deck didn't really accomplish anything, but it's a neat idea. But they do actually have one really strong card, and that is the 3 Moonlight Mystery Geckos. So when an opponent's monster declares an attack, while you have a face-up level 3 or lower reptile-type normal monster on your field, one face-up reptile-type monster on your field gains attack equal to the number of face-up reptile-type monsters on your field times 1000 until the end of the turn. So if we have 3 face-up reptiles and our opponent attacks into us, we can flip this over and give our guy plus 3000 attack. Now that is actually a very, very substantial combat trick, and why I don't think we would get this card, because plus 3000 attack seems pretty good, and we don't really have that many strong trap cards, so I don't know why this is the one that Konami would decide to give us. And now we'll talk about some Aqua cards. So this card again did release alongside Dark Galaxy in the same box. This is Diankito the Cure Maiden. So if we have a face-up field spell on our field, draw 1 card and show it. Then if that card is a field spell, gain 1000 life points. So gaining 1000 life points is nice, but it's not the main reason we play this card. We play it just to draw 1 card. So as Aqua kind of developed as a deck, we started getting more and more plussing. As we've seen in Duel Links already, we already have Fashion of Faith, which is a fantastic card, and we got Nyan Nyan, which is also a really good card to help our consistency. So just having a boss monster that draws a card, this is generally going to be better than either of the current Diankitos we've got. The only negative here is that we have to have a field spell. So what field spell would we be using? Well, we have a couple of options. The first one being Rainy Megalopolis. So this card's actually kind of cool. So we can only activate this card if we have 2 or more face-up Aqua-type monsters in our field. While this card is face-up in the field zone, Aqua-type monsters gain 200 attack and non-Aqua-type monsters lose 200 attack, which is kind of the same as just a plus 400, right? It's always going to be a 400 difference between our monsters and their monsters. So this is okay. Obviously the downside here is that we have to run a field spell, and field spells a lot of the time can feel a little bit like a dead card, but if we can get this out at the same time as Cure Maiden, we can draw 1 card and basically pay for the field spell, if you think about it like that, so it's not too bad. And this is the better of the 2 in my opinion. The other field spell is Bubble Kingdom, which is while this card is face up in the field zone, face up Aqua type normal monsters on the field gain 500 attack. Now this only works with normal monsters, and by this point we'll be past the point of wanting to run a ton of normal monsters. And then we'll talk about another of their support cards, Caught in the Rain. I thought I'd mention this, but this is not particularly good. So in order to use this, we have to have a field spell on the field. All face-up normal monsters on your opponent's field lose attack equal to the number of monsters on your opponent's field times 300 until the end of the turn. If your opponent has 3 normal monsters, the whole board will lose 900 attack, which is okay. And then we can destroy a back row. So this card is bad because we can't destroy the back row unless your opponent has normal monsters, and we can't weaken the normal monsters unless we have a field spell. So we have to have a field spell, and your opponent has to have normal monsters, and to get full value, your opponent also has to have a back row. There's too many hoops to jump through. This card is just bad. In a side deck format, maybe there's a slim chance you'd play this, but probably not. And now we'll talk about the cards that were released at the very, very start of Go Rush that we've kind of already skipped. And this is the first one, Kappa Emperor River Slider. We have already talked about the Kappa archetype in previous videos, so we're just going to touch on it and remind you that this still exists, and this should be out by now. At 2500 attack, level 7, send a face-up Aqua-type monster on your field to the graveyard, destroy it to 2 face-up level 7 or lower normal monsters on your opponent's field. So this card could come out because it would be quite a good deterrent against Light Galaxy, which is very, very strong right now. So this is potentially a front runner for cards that could come out in the next box. And another skipped archetype is going to be our Insect. So we've actually kind of skipped over both iterations of Insect. We skipped over the Ant Rebellion of the Rebellion from Sevens, and we've also kind of skipped over these Go Rush Insects as well. So this is the first one, Angler Digra. This is 2400 attack, send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard, then if an insect monster is among the cards sent, this card gains attack equal to the number of monsters sent to the graveyard times 400. So this will either gain 0, or 400, or 800, so this will cap out at 32, which is not too bad. This is fine, it's nothing too crazy, but it's pretty okay. And then the other insect boss monster is Blade Armor King Dinosaurus. Shuffle 3 monsters from your graveyard into the deck, destroy 1 face-up level 5 to 8 insect type monster on your opponent's field. Now notably, the insect cards do have a lot of ways to change your opponent's monsters into insects, which will make this effect live. Now the only negative is, this only works on 5 to 8s, so this will only work on very specific boss monsters. This won't work on maximums, this will not work on most fusions, and this won't even work on your opponent's weaker monsters, they're level 4 or lowers. So this is a little bit awkward, but it's okay, right? 2500 attack that can pop one of your opponent's boss monsters is still pretty strong. And then finally, we'll talk about some of the cards we could get that will support current Go Rush decks. And this would be my pick for Light Galaxy, Transamu Jirai. So if you have a face-up monster with 1600 or more attack on your field, send the top card of your deck to the graveyard. This turn, one face-up level 4 light attribute Galaxy type monster on your field can make 2 attacks on monsters. So this is clearly designed to be used alongside Transam Linak, who can then attack twice with its 1600 body, and if we have Epherai, we can also boost it by an extra 1000, so it becomes a 2600 attack monster that can attack twice, which is pretty good. If they were to get a boss, I think Vanishing Heliacal Riser would be the best bet. So this is a 2400 attack, which is not great. If we have 2 or less cards on our hand, shuffle 1 monster from your graveyard into the deck. This card gains 200 attack until the end of this turn, so go up to 26 is fine. Then if there is a face-up spell card on the field, we can draw 1 card. So right now, this would have to be specifically field spells, so it's unlikely to come off. But not long after this card released, we did get the introduction of equip spell cards into Go Rush, so this would be a good card to come out. Basically play around field spells for a bit, and then as equips come out, ready to power this card up a little bit. Now, for Yuamu, SSD Drake I think makes the most sense. If your opponent has a monster on the field, we can send 1 spell trap from our hand to the graveyard, so we do -1 ourselves. Then we special summon 2 level 4 or lower dragon type normal monsters from your graveyard to your field and face-up defense. So this does end up +1ing because we -1 and then we +2, so it ends up as a +1, which is pretty good for just getting out boss monsters. And what boss monster do we want to get out? Well, Red Boot Boost Dragon, really cool boss monster. We can choose up to 6 dragon monsters in our graveyard, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the number of monsters chosen times 100, so maximum 700 burn damage. Then we gain attack equal to the number of monsters times 100, so we'll go up to 3100 attack. And then we shuffle those monsters back into our deck. So this is just a really good card. We get some burn, we get an attack boost, we get to recycle back into our deck, and this card will get a fusion later on, which will basically do all of this again, but for higher numbers, which does help with the strategy. So Red Boot Boost Dragon would make sense to come out, as again, this card did come out right after Dark Galaxy got introduced into the OCG. And then finally, we'll talk about some of Yuhi's cards. I think Pantula would be an excellent addition to Duel Links. So if we normal summon this card this turn, your opponent has 2 or more spell traps on their field, we can add 1 level 4 machine type normal monster from our graveyard to our hand. Now, the only real negative about this card would be that you could play this in other decks, such as Cyber Dragon or such as just the generic light machine pile. But this is still a really cool card. We can basically get a free +1. It is very restrictive. Your opponent does have to have 2 spell traps. We do have to have a level 4 exactly normal monster in our graveyard. So it's not quite as easy as, let's say, like a Seahorse Carrier, but it's still pretty cool. I'd really like to see this card come out, and it has okay stats. And the boss monster I most would like to see is Joint-Tech Hero. I've mentioned this in a few videos before, but I really like Joint-Tech Hero. I would love for Joint-Tech Hero to come out. This card, again, came out too late in the OCG and was never really very good. If it came out now, it would be perfect for Duel Links. I would really like for this card to be really, really strong, and I think this is the best chance we would get. But what does this card do? 2500 attack. During the turn, you normal summon this card by tributing a Joint-Tech Ace, which is a 1500 vanilla. We send the top card of the deck to the graveyard, gain 1500 attack to the end of this turn, so it becomes a 4000 attack monster. Then we can add 1 Earth Attribute Machine type monster from our graveyard to our hand, and we know that we've got that Joint-Tech Ace in the graveyard, so we bring that back, and we summon it out as a 1500 beater as well. It's very simple, but it's very effective. Realistically, I think we're more likely to get Joint-Tech Tomatosaurs, which is mediocre. 2300 attack is very weak for a boss monster. We can send a card from our hand to the graveyard, which again, giving up cards from our hand is not something we really want to be doing. And we can change an attack position monster to defense position and make that monster lose 2000 attack. This is actually not bad. We can basically kill anything with this, because as long as it's not a maximum monster, it can be in defense, and then we can just minus 2000 defense. So even if it had 3000 defense, we could still get it down to 1000 and attack over it with our Tomatosaurs. So this is actually still pretty good. Its attack stats a bit low. Other than that, this is really good. It's just a little bit boring. I just want Joint-Tech Hero. Give me Joint-Tech Hero, Konami. But that is it. That is everything that we are predicting we're going to be getting at the end of November, along with ZUWIJO. We're expecting a Super Mini to come out, and I would expect a lot of Dark Galaxy cards with some sprinkles of other decks in there as well. Now, there is a massive catalogue of cards that could come out, but based on the information we have, we've basically made educated guesses on what we think would make sense to come out along with ZUWIJO. But thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.